Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 1, Episode 9, The Witch is Back. Our episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of exactly what happens within this episode. Matthew is unsealed from a cursed locket and goes after the sisters' powers. So in response, they summon Melinda, their ancestor, to help them defeat him, while Rex and Hannah plot against the sisters secretly. Once we rewatch the episode, we give the episode a ranking against all of the other episodes within this season. And we have two lists, a mostly objective ranking list, which is absent emotion, and then the personal ranking list, which is with emotion. So, as always, for our rankings, we start with the mostly objective rank values, and I've highlighted those that I felt applied to this episode. To start with, at 1 point each, we have the single episode supporting character introductions of Melinda Warren and then also Matthew Tate. We also get single episode supporting character development in that we learn about Melinda and Matthew's previous relationship. They have a conflict, they kind of have a little bit of chemistry. We also learn a bit more about Melinda's past and what she has done. And because each of those are worth 1 point each, and then there's the two characters, that brings us to a total of 4 points so far. We then have our world building moments where we have the introduction of blinking, which is basically letting us know that there are alternate magical modes of travel that are very quick, that that are part of this world. And we also learn that the dead can be summoned through rituals and the like, and that they can be given a physical form in order to interact with the world of the living. And then we also learn that the Book of Shadows is much larger than it was when Melinda started it, which of course gives future implications that it is able to be added to over time and that their ancestors have added to it, and that therefore the sisters also over time, as they grow into their powers, will be able to add to it as well for the sake of future generations in the forward, and that is also worth 4 points, bringing us to 8. We then have our multi-season main character growth, and this is Phoebe, who has her first premonition of the past. In all of the episodes to date before this one, she has only ever seen the future, and with this one, she has now seen the past, so that shows that her power has grown, and that is also worth another 4 points, bringing us to 12. And then the final positive for this episode is the main relationship development, and this of course is with Piper and Leo. It's revealed at the start of this episode that they're still in a flirty stage, and Piper's still working on her courage. However, by the end of the episode, just before they're sending Melinda back to the realms of the dead, the afterlife, wherever she was before they summoned her, Piper asks Leo if he would like to go out with her, and he tells her that he'd love to and to call him, which is progressing the relationship forward and hopefully this time not a false start. And that also is worth 4 points, which brings us all the way up to 16 out of 10 so far. However, there are some negatives for this episode as well. So to start off, I think it's permissible given the circumstances, but I want to always be fair on the objective list and keep my emotion out of it. So there was some negative messaging and or behavior that was present within this episode, and that had to do with Prue. Prue obviously committed thievery from the museum in order to get the feather of an endangered owl, which was on display at the museum, which is better than going and hunting down the endangered animal or going to like a zoo and trying to get it. So, I mean, the museum was the best option, but ultimately she did have to break into the museum after hours and she did steal it. That is a crime. Negative messaging and behavior applies. And then after she comes out, we do have Andy who tries to arrest her because he had followed her. And she, of course, evades arrest and runs off, which again should not be done. So, because of that, it is a minus 2 points, which brings us down to 14. We then have our main relationship regression or breakup, and this is also Piper and Leo. So at the end of the last episode, because of the truth spell, Leo forgot about their first kiss and Piper's confession. So that was a complete false start. That is not what I'm counting as regression. At the end of the episode, after the spell had worn off, Piper's asking him out to drinks. That leaves us as the audience with the impression that, she's asked him out, they're going to have drinks. And they're going to start their relationship for real. She already knows that the feelings were mutual. This is the impression that we're left with, and that's where we think that they are. And then when this episode starts, we find out that in fact Piper did not do anything about the relationship, that even though because of the truth spell she knows the feelings are mutual, she still lacked the courage to actually officially ask Leo out. So the relationship has gone from that we have mutual feelings, we're going to get drinks, all the way back to Piper hinting about and flirting, but not anything official, which is a regression at the start of the episode, though, as mentioned from the positives, we do at least get some movement forward by the end of the episode. Still, we're regressed from the last episode, and that is a minus 3, bringing us to 11. And then I think the biggest negative, at least point-wise, though impact to the story, debatable, is the continuity errors. So in episode 1, all the way back in episode 1, Phoebe is researching the Book of Shadows, and she talks about how Melinda Warren, when she was burned at the stake, gave a prophecy about how her line would grow and strengthen, culminating in the birth of 3 sisters who would be the greatest witches of all time, the Charmed ones, which are the sisters. This is the backstory we were given all the way back in episode 1. Now, in this episode, they have Melinda being brought back, and they ask her why she allowed herself to burn when she was such a powerful witch, and she states that the reason that she allowed herself to burn was because she had a daughter, and if she had used her powers, that would have proven the charge that she was a witch true, and her daughter would have also burned. So instead, she let herself be burned at the stake in the hopes that someone kind would take in her daughter and raise her daughter so that the line could continue. Obviously, same thing as using your powers to get out of burning. If you're giving a prophecy as you're burning, that would kind of indicate that yes, you were a witch and your daughter is too. So we have 2 different stories that kind of counter each other. Both can't be true. This one doesn't mention anything about her giving a prophecy as they burned, so obviously an oversight, continuity error. They forgot that they had already said that she gave a prophecy, and that obviously has been retconned out. So, as mentioned, continuity error. The second one is when Matthew blinks, Melinda says that that his power to move from one place to another in the blink of an eye, called blinking, was a power he must have copied from another witch. However, because we are rewatchers, we know that in the future, that's just a base warlock power. All warlocks in the future typically will be able to blink. Even the sisters, when they go to the darker side of things, will gain the power to blink once they have become evil. So it's not a power copied from a witch, but a base warlock power in the future. But in this one, they're trying to say that it's a copied power, which we obviously know not the case. So that also is the continuity errors that I picked up in this episode. There could have been more that I missed, but for this episode, those are the ones that I saw, and that is worth a -4 points as well. And that brings us then to a final, mostly objective ranking for this episode of 7 out of 10. And with that ranking, a reminder of our season 1 episode rankings so far. In first place, we have Something Wicked This Way Comes, I've Got You Under My Skin, Dead Man Dating, Dream Sorcerer. This episode falls into 5th place with The Witch is Back. Then we have Thank You for Not Morphing, The Truth is Out There and It Hurts, The Wedding from Hell, and then in last place is The Fourth Sister. So now to my personal ranking. I felt that this was one of the stronger episodes of season 1. It's not the most memorable in that, like, when I'm thinking back on all of my most favorite episodes of all time, this one doesn't usually make the list, but it was very strong, and it is one that I enjoy watching every time that I watch it. Obviously, we get our start in the past, where we get like a flashback to when Melinda first cursed Matthew. Oh my goodness. I've just remembered. I just finished the objective ranking and I was talking about the continuity. Here is another continuity error. When they have the flashback to the past at the start of the episode, Melinda asks him about the passion, the heat, why he, seduced her. And he states that he needed her to trust him in order to share her powers. Yet, once Matthew gets out of the locket and we're in the modern day, Matthew just needs them to attack him using their powers, and then he gets to take them. So, bit of an error on how he gets the powers, and there's no real explanation as to why the process changed. And that's all within the same episode, so bit of continuity error there. I'm just going to call that out because I forgot about it before. But anyways, he comes out of the locket. Prue uses her powers immediately on him. He takes them, and then he realizes she doesn't have the other powers, that there must be others, notes that the last name is now Hallowell, not Warren, and then he shatters the window using her powers before falling to the streets. This is where the Andy and Daryl come into this episode. And in this episode, when Andy and Daryl arrive, he looks up at the window. Daryl comments they have to figure out whose office it is. Andy says that he knows whose office it is. It's Prue's. And Daryl kind of is a bit hesitant, but Andy says that there is no longer a conflict of interest because he and Prue are no longer dating. I disagree with this because when people break up, there typically is some resentment. There's usually kind of like somebody's got the sour grapes, somebody's going to be bitter about it. You're still emotionally compromised, just in a different way than when you're successfully dating, more in a negative way. And so personally, I think that that shows that there still would be a conflict of interest. We can see this, and immediately Andy, on his own without Daryl, going to Prue's house. He gets turned away by Phoebe. Then he stakes out the house in his car because he doesn't have a warrant, follows Prue to the museum where he's then able to arrest her, and she evades the arrest. And after she evades the arrest, he goes back to the station where Daryl is, and basically he's like, I'm gonna go wake a judge. I'm gonna get her, get her, get her, get her. And Morris basically has to yell at him and be like, this is your job. You're gonna have like, nobody's gonna issue a warrant for like a feather of all things. It's a single feather. Blah, blah, blah. You're not gonna wake a judge for this. You're gonna be doing parking tickets. Like basically like, get yourself under control. You're out of control. You're a dog with a bone. Stop. And of course, he does eventually calm Andy down, but this just highlights what I had mentioned before, that there was genuinely a conflict of interest. Given that they had broken up, there were emotions involved, which would conflict with the interest of just doing the base job, because Andy goes a bit far. As always, I want to note that when the sisters are performing like a ritual for magic, The setup and the scene in the attic with the cauldron in the middle, all the candles around it, they usually start with a top view. There's almost always like fog and mist and stuff. Always an amazing atmosphere. I love the ritual spells that they do and the potion spells that they do the most just because of that whole atmosphere with the cauldron and the candles and the awesomeness. And I feel like later in the series they do less of them. So I'm really enjoying season one where they're doing like every few episodes they do one of their little like rituals where they're sitting at like the short table with the candles and the cauldron. And of course they do that twice in the attic, one to summon Melinda, one to send her back, and then they also create the curse in the kitchen, which also is a little less mystical, but also has a lot of misting. So we got spoiled in this episode for the Misty Cauldron atmospheres. There's also the beautiful lights when she does appear and when she does get sent back, where you just get like that golden little light that just like swirls around her and then the like mystical wind. The effects in this one were pretty great. I also really enjoy how, in both Matthew's case and Melinda's, their reactions to modern things are pretty amusing. So, on Matthew's part, we have the once he's found by Hannah and Rex, Hannah gets him modern clothes and he comments on how tight the pants are, and no wonder all the men are frowning in this age. You know, it's a surprise they can even walk because the jeans are tight, which is pretty hilarious. That's really only his main reaction, though. He doesn't have as many as Melinda. But then on Melinda's side, she doesn't know what plumbing is. She sees like the modern dress and is so in awe of the zipper. Doesn't know that, you don't make your own clothes, but you buy them. She gets freaked out by the food processor when Phoebe and Piper phone the house. The answering machine goes off and she's like talking into the air, trying to say that she's there. Then she pushes a button, ends up turning the machine off, which of course panics Phoebe and Piper on the other end. Overall, a lot of those, like just those little things, reacting to like little normal things, is very amusing and adds some lightness to the otherwise pretty heavy subject matter. And then we, of course, have Rex and Hannah who decide to help, who are the ones who gave Prue the locket, track down Matthew as he's going around killing Hallowell lawyer, Hallowell mechanic, and they put him on the track of the actual sisters, giving him the address of Quake, which is where he goes to get Phoebe's power of premonition. I do kind of like also where we've got Rex and Hannah, they're partners, they're after the sisters. This is the episode where they confirm for themselves that they really are the charmed ones, though I feel like they know about all of the sisters prior to this. Like, I think they knew, but anyways, they officially state verbally that they have outed the sisters as the charmed ones. Again, I'm not sure why it was in question, but we have Hannah helping Matthew get dressed, and she's, of course, having him try on multiple outfits because he's a good looking man. And Rex comes in and he's like very clearly jealous. And then I have mentioned as well, like Matthew and Melinda, they had a fling, obviously, so he could share her powers in the past. She says there was passion, there was heat. In this episode, when he comes out, as soon as he gets Phoebe's power, he sees Melinda's in the modern era, and it's like, forget about Piper, who's there too, forget about everything else, I've gotta go. And he goes directly to their house to find Melinda. They kiss. Obviously, there's passion still, there's chemistry. I feel like in another universe, had he not been evil, they probably would have made an amazing couple. I also like the way that, Melinda, she's like blonde haired, blue eyed. He's got the brown eyes and the brunette hair. The sisters, they've got two of them have the brown eyes and brunette hair, one of them has blue eyes and brunette hair, and I feel like they could have made a great couple and they could actually have been the parents of the sisters. I think the actor and actress had great chemistry for that. So I really like kind of how it's kind of that even though they are enemies, and they do have the determination to kill each other. There is still that chemistry from that relationship, and they do get to they do share a kiss in that scene before he ultimately is destroyed. Another negative, though, that I wasn't overly fond of was the fact that Rex gives him a gun in order to try to get Piper to freeze him, but then he takes Piper hostage. And if he shot the gun, she would probably be dead before she could freeze. Because, like, bullets move really fast, and he had that gun, like, right pressed up against her. So if he did actually shoot it to try to get her to freeze, she'd be dead before he could, and he wouldn't get the powers anyway. So, wrong sister to take hostage, I think. But either way, I don't like them adding in, like, the modern gun when it's, like, a magic fight. You know, bring magic to a magic fight, gun to a muggle fight. Or immortal fight, as they're called in Charmed. But not my favorite decision that the show made, but still, these little negatives that I point out and criticisms weren't enough to damage how entertaining and likable this episode was. So, without further ado, my personal ranking, the score that I gave this episode is a 9 out of 10. And so, as a reminder of our season 1 rankings so far, on the personal ranking, we have in first place Dead Man Dating. This episode gets second place with The Witch is Back. Then The Truth is Out There and It Hurts. Something Wicca This Way Comes. Dream Sorcerer. Thank You for Not Morphing. I've Got You Under My Skin. The Wedding from Hell. And in the last place, The Fourth Sister. And now at last our final segment of the video where we rank each season against each other in the series ranking so far. As a reminder, there's 22 episodes in the season. Maximum total score of 220 is possible. With the addition of our mostly objective score of 7, we now come up to 53 out of 220. And then on the personal ranking side, we're adding 9, and that brings us to 55 out of 220. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 1, Episode 9, The Witch is Back. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.